Good evening, book lovers. Welcome to another episode of Cath-Lit Live. I am your host, Amy Cattapan. You can find me everywhere on social media under my pen name, AJ Cattapan. If you are new to Cath-Lit Live, what you're going to find here are interviews with Catholic authors who have new books releasing, both fiction and nonfiction. And if you haven't checked out our sponsor yet, the Hallow Prayer app, please go check them out at hallow.app/cathlitlive. And you can get a free trial of the premium version of the Hallow Prayer app. You can also find the link for that in the show notes on YouTube. Well, tonight it's episode 60. I had to go and double check that. I was like, I had that in my notes. I was like, is that right? Is this actually number 60? So I had to go back to my YouTube channel and find out, yes, this is indeed episode number 60. Not too bad for a show I only do about once a month. But we have a returning guest, a very prolific friend of mine, my neighbor to the north up in Wisconsin. Tonight we have Amanda Lauer coming back and joining us again. And in case you are not familiar with Amanda, she is an avid reader and history buff since childhood. She's the author of the award-winning Heaven Intended Civil War series and the time travel novels Anything But Groovy and Royal and Ancient. Amanda and her husband John have been married 43 years, have 4 married children and 8 precious grandchildren. So help me welcome back to the show, Amanda Lauer. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing great.
Well, welcome back to
Thank
talk
you.
about which number book is this now? It's A Fate Such as Heaven Intended, but what number is it in the Heaven Intended Civil War series?
Number 5.
Number 5. Oh my goodness. Did you think this is what you were going to do when you started this series, is have so many of them?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, when I wrote the book, A World Such as Heaven Intended, I thought that was it. It was one and done. It was such an endeavor that I thought I will never, ever write another book in my life. It was like a 6-year process from the beginning stages and, everything you go through and finding a publisher and the editing and all that, and then the marketing. And about a week after that book came out, people were asking when the sequel was coming out, and I went into a major panic mode because I was like, there is no sequel. But they twisted my arm, and there was a sequel, and after I had 2, and then I thought, well, you can't have just a 2-book series. It has to be at least 3, so that was 3. And then the 4th book came about because actually a producer from Hollywood, believe it or not, wanted me to write a book that had a person of color as the main character and add it to the series, and so I did. And after that, I had one more in mind that I was going to do, which I still will do, but it got pushed back a little bit because my 11-year-old grandson has been asking me for a couple years now to write a book where he's the hero. So there will be a 6th book in the series that I've got maybe 1 chapter written of. But this book came about because when we were shooting the cover for the 4th book, A Freedom Such as Heaven Intended, I was working with my photographer, Brad Burkholtz, and we had worked together for probably more than 20 years because we had started working together at a newspaper. And he would shoot photos for me for the stories I was writing. So I'd known him forever. He had shot almost all my previous covers, plus other books and other series that I've written. And so I had asked him to shoot book 4, that cover, and it turned out beautifully. And he was telling me about his daughter and what a lovely young lady she was and how she would probably make a great cover model. And I was thinking about it, I thought, I should use her for a cover coming up. I didn't have a book in mind at that point. And then somewhere along the line, during the pandemic, Brad ended up getting sick. And I knew he was not doing well. Had nothing to do with the pandemic, was something different. But I asked him then if he would agree to shoot a photo with like a photo cover session with his daughter as the model. I had never met her. I had no idea what she looked like, nothing. And he was more than happy to do it because he's a super proud dad. And at the time, she was probably a junior or senior in high school. And so we shot this cover, and it was beautiful, gorgeous. And I was just like so happy with it. And I said, okay, someday I'm going to write a book to fit this cover and figure out the story from there. But what happened is Brad unfortunately died at the age of 50. And so to kind of honor his legacy, I said I have to put this book first and write it first. So I wrote a book about the Civil War, another one in the series, also again based on true events during the Civil War. And his daughter's on the cover, and she's a beautiful cover model, and she's become a friend. I'm super excited about it. And as a matter of fact, we're having coffee together Wednesday this week, and I'm going to actually present her the signed copy with her picture on it.
Oh, very nice. Now, tell us like the little elevator pitch. What is this story about? And can people read it separately if they haven't read the first books in the series?
Yeah, absolutely. All the books are standalone, so you can read them in any order. And a lot of people do. They just pick the cover they like better or the location. This story, like I said, is based on a true story. And this young lady does have a connection with the first book. She's one of the younger sisters of the main gentleman in the first book, Nathan. So it's his younger sister. So her older brothers are heading off to fight in the war, and she doesn't want to sit back at home while they're going off. And the only boy in her entire class in their one room schoolhouse is going off with them. So she decides to cut her hair, dress up as a boy, and follow along in the train. And she's going to be a drummer. This is what she's come up with. Well, the train takes them to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on the verge of one of the bloodiest wars of the Civil War. Of course, she didn't realize what was happening. Nobody did at that time.
Yeah.
And she finds herself in the middle of this. And so she had gone there as supposedly a drummer boy, and she ends up being, all the drummer boys were basically sent into the field to be stretcher bearers. So she's bringing all the bodies in, bringing them to these homes that are turned into hospitals, and they're working on these people. And she gets the idea in her head that she wants to go into the medical field after everything she went through, because then she started assisting with surgeries. They were just so overwhelmed. And she meets this young man who is a brilliant surgeon, but he's a captive because he's a surgeon for the Confederate Army. And he's like her age, and he's already she couldn't get over it. He's maybe 18 years old, and he's a surgeon. And it turns out he's just a brilliant young man. And he's an interesting fellow because he's not like my typical characters in books, because some may say on the spectrum, some may just say doesn't have great emotional skills or not a great bedside manner. He was very, very smart, very technical, but he lacked in the soft skills. And this is where she comes in. She's great at that part, and he isn't. But he does find something about her, and she finds something about him. But of course, he's a captive, and he gets sent off somewhere. Well, the next year they end up connecting again in Gettysburg as they're winding down, all the hospitals being shut down. And by chance, they both end up getting transferred to Washington City to work in hospitals there. And there the adventures begin, because it's at the time, it's the last year of the Civil War. Obviously, President Lincoln, we know he gets assassinated, but they end up meeting him, getting to know him, and getting entangled in this whole plot. And it's very interesting because not only are they there literally in Ford Theater when he's shot, but then this young man, his name is Benedict, he goes by Ben. He is one of the men that's entrusted to go try to capture John Wilkes Booth. So it's got a lot of interesting twists and turns. And I think people appreciate it, especially characters like him, because I've never seen it in a book actually, where you have a person who he's not the typical strapping, vivacious male character that you see in typical love stories. He's quirky, let's put it this way, but she finds him endearing, and he certainly is interested in her as well.
Yeah. So when you were creating this character, now the main female character is Ruth, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you were creating her, obviously you had the image in your head of your friend's daughter who's on the cover. Did you, was that the only inspiration that you had for her? Like, did you also model the personality after her after you met her? Or were you just kind of taking her image and then the personality came elsewhere?
No, what I did is I was just like so taken by her. She is such a wonderful young lady, and just something about her. She's kind of spunky. She's just got a great personality. And I said, you are actually the perfect personality for Ruth. So what I have is I have a character questionnaire. Normally I fill it out for the characters I'm making up in my head, but this one I gave to her, and she actually
Fun.
filled it out for me. And it's great because the character is really, it's her. It's her back in the 1860s. And I just love how the character turned out. And the male, Benedict, is modeled after a few different people that I know. One of my friends, her son Benedict, by chance they have the same name, and actually my daughter's husband. She just got married in October, and he's a brilliant person, and it kind of reminds me of him too. And she's read the book, and she can see the resemblance there.
All right. So one more question before I let you go here tonight. You said he's a little quirky, maybe a little on the spectrum. And I know you and I are both fans of The Chosen. Is he a little Matthew-like?
Oh gosh, yes. I am so enamored with that character. Every time I read like the Gospel of Matthew, I can't stop but thinking of that show because I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, I love the fact that they've made him that way. It just makes you just feel the story. It's
Mm-hmm.
so neat to see it from his perspective and how meticulous he was about the notes he took and such. So yeah, I had to kind of build that in a little bit too.
All right. All right. I had to ask about that, knowing how much we both like the show. All right. Well, I'm very excited for you. This is book number 5 in the Heaven Intended series. Where can people find out more about your, because it's not just the series I mentioned before in your bio, you also have your time travel books, Anything But Groovy and Royal and Ancient. So if people want to find out more about your time travel books or the rest of the Heaven Intended series, where can they find you?
The easiest place is to go to my website, amandalauer.com. And right away, when you go to there, you get an option to sign up for my newsletter. That comes out about every 2 weeks or so. And there's also my blogs are linked to there. All the books you can find on there with descriptions of them and all sorts of stuff. I'm kind of an open book myself. So when you read my blog, you really know a lot about my life as a writer and my life as a wife and a grandma to 8 wonderful children, as you probably mentioned, grandchildren. And yeah, so that's where you can go. Otherwise, if you just want the books, you can go right to Amazon. But you can also, the link for Amazon's in my website too, so you can read all sorts of things. And it also gives my next book signings and things like that that are going on in my writing life too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on again, Amanda. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I always love talking to you, and I can't wait to see you again. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Good night, Amanda. Thanks for
Bye.
coming on.
Oh,
Bye.
for sure.
All right. So if you haven't checked out her books yet, again, you can go to amandalauer.com to check out her books. Again, time travel and historical fiction, specifically with the Civil War, of course, for the Heaven Intended series. If you have read some of her previous books, leave a comment. Let us know what you've read, what you've enjoyed about her books. I know I've got at least one or two mixed in with my Christmas cards are still up, everybody. Mixed in with behind some of my Christmas cards, I think I've got some of her Heaven Intended series back there. So don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and until next time, I'm just going to wish you happy reading.